Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're all about getting to the heart of complex topics here, cutting through the noise. And today we're diving deep into something pretty fascinating. Digital twins. We're dissecting a whole lecture series on it, so buckle up.
Yeah, no need to wade through endless academic papers. We've got you covered.
So when we talk about digital twins, what are we really talking about? Give us the elevator pitch.
Imagine a digital replica of something real, like a machine, a biological system, or even, a whole city. But it's not just a static copy. This digital version is connected to its real-world counterpart. It's constantly taking in data, so it's alive, evolving, and that lets us monitor, analyze, optimize, and even predict what might happen down the road.
All right, so it's like a virtual crystal ball in a way.
Hmm.
Now, I know this concept started in engineering, right, with virtual prototypes and simulations, but it's spread its wings way beyond that, especially in life sciences. What's different about digital twins when we're talking about living things?
That's where it gets really interesting. In life sciences, you see this shift from one-to-one mirroring to something called virtual cohorts.
Virtual
Right.
cohorts.
Instead of a digital copy of one person, you have a digital group, right? But this group embodies the crucial biological features of, say, a population with a specific disease. And this lets researchers do things they couldn't do before, like generate tons of realistic data without needing huge, expensive real-world trials.
So it's about capturing the essence of a group, not making a perfect copy of one individual. Makes sense. Now, creating these digital things, these twins, it sounds like a massive team effort. Who are the brains behind this kind of work?
Oh, it's a real mix of disciplines, a real melting pot. You've
Yeah.
got your AI specialists building the predictive brains of these twins, right? Then you've got the experts in physics-based modeling who understand the fundamental laws at play. And of course, you need the IoT people setting up data streams, the big data experts to handle the information deluge, numerical simulation gurus running complex scenarios, and data analysts making sense of it all.
A real A-team of science. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of this lecture series. What was the big picture here? What were the organizers hoping to achieve?
Well, from what I gathered, they wanted to give a clear and comprehensive overview of this whole digital twin landscape, a structured introduction to this rapidly evolving field. They wanted to distill the core knowledge and highlight just how many different approaches exist. It was about taking people from the very basics to the cutting edge.
And they started with the fundamentals, right? The
Yeah.
source material mentions a structured intro covering some key areas. What were the building blocks?
Yeah, they laid a solid foundation. They started with the absolute basics, data acquisition and processing. How do you actually get the data you need to build a digital twin in the first place? Then they moved into the core of it all, modeling. They explored both mechanistic approaches, which are based on understanding the underlying mechanisms, and data-driven approaches, where the models learn from patterns in the data itself.
So both the why and the what of how things work.
Exactly. And crucially, they also covered study design, how to effectively use digital twins in research, and of course, the increasingly vital ethical and legal considerations. Can't forget those.
Right, especially when you're talking about healthcare and all the sensitive data involved. Did they flag any particular challenges in that area?
Oh, absolutely. Uncertainty handling is a big one. How do you account for all the unknowns and variability in complex systems? Then there's data leakage, especially with sensitive information. And then, of course, there's the challenge of generalization. Can you trust a model trained on one data set to predict accurately in completely different situations? That's a big one.
Yeah, I can see how those would be major roadblocks. And the applications, it seems like digital twins have their fingers in every pie.
Mm.
The source material mentions everything from informatics to physics. Talk about wide-ranging.
Oh, yeah. The scope is pretty mind-blowing. They covered informatics, how digital twins can revolutionize data management and analysis. Then there's the whole biology and health side, which we'll get into more. Material science, they showed how virtual models can help discover new materials, really speed things up. And naturally, chemistry and physics were big, too, simulating complex reactions and processes.
So a real digital twin world tour. Let's zoom in on some of those lecture topics. They started with the very basics. What are digital twins? Getting everyone on the same page from the get-go.
Exactly, establishing that common ground. Then they jumped into the nuts and bolts of data acquisition and processing and the two fundamental modeling approaches, mechanistic and data-driven. Those lectures would give everyone the tools to understand the more applied stuff that came later.
One lecture title really jumped out at me. Building Trust in Medical Digital Twins. Bridging the gap between research models and patient outcomes. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? Applying this technology to real people.
It is. And what's interesting is the focus on how to actually translate the potential of these models into real benefits for patients. The lecture tackled some of the unique challenges in healthcare, like the limited availability of data, especially when it comes to measurements that could potentially harm a patient.
Yeah, can't exactly experiment willy-nilly on people.
Exactly. They also talked about how machine learning might help overcome some of those data scarcity problems.
And I imagine the regulatory side of things adds another layer of complexity in the medical world, doesn't it?
Huge. They specifically mention things like the MDR, the AI Act, and GDPR, these big European regulations for medical devices, AI, and data privacy. These create a whole legal framework that developers have to navigate. Plus, there's the practical challenges of limited computing power and dealing with unstructured medical data like patient notes and images, all that messy stuff.
So building trust isn't just about how accurate the model is, but also making sure it's ethical, practical,
Yeah.
actually usable in a clinical setting.
Absolutely. A big takeaway was the need for collaboration, bringing together doctors, data scientists, engineers, ethicists, everyone. It's about building confidence in the medical community and among patients, making sure these models actually address things that matter in the real world.
Real-world impact, that's key. They also had a lecture on uncertainty quantification in machine learning. Now, why is understanding uncertainty so crucial when we're using machine learning with digital twins?
Well, think about it. If a digital twin is making predictions that influence real-world decisions, like about a patient's treatment or how a machine operates, we need to know how much we can trust those predictions, right?
Right.
Uncertainty quantification is all about that. It's about figuring out how confident we are in a model's output. This lecture covered different statistical approaches and the trade-offs between, accuracy and computational cost. Because sometimes a quick and dirty estimate is enough, but in high-stakes situations, you really need to know the margin of error.
Makes sense. You got to know how solid the ground is before you build on it.
Yeah.
There was also a lecture on building digital twins of development and disease. That sounds pretty futuristic.
Oh, it is. This one was about using computational simulations and data-driven models to create virtual versions of biological systems. It's mind-blowing, really. This opens up incredible possibilities for bioengineering and personalized medicine. They talked about these advanced simulation frameworks that can model tissues in incredible detail, and how researchers are using real data from imaging and experiments to refine these virtual models. The progress they're making in understanding things like morphogenesis, how tissues develop, and even simulating the effects of treatments virtually, it's really groundbreaking.
It's like having a virtual lab to study life and disease.
Exactly. It's faster, cheaper, and ethically speaking, way less complicated than traditional research.
Yeah, virtual petri dish. Then they had a more general lecture, Digital Twins in Health. So a broader look at applications in healthcare, I guess.
Yep. Probably a wider view of how digital twins are being used and could be used to revolutionize healthcare. Things beyond just modeling individual patients, like optimizing drug discovery or making hospitals run more efficiently.
Lots of potential there. And finally, Bayesian optimization for digital twins. Now that sounds pretty technical. What's the advantage of using this method in the digital twin world?
The cool thing about Bayesian optimization is that it's really efficient, especially when you're dealing with complex problems where, doing experiments, whether in the lab or on a computer, is expensive or takes a long time. It's a smarter way to find the best settings or parameters for a specific outcome. So in the context of digital twins, you could use it to, say, optimize conditions for a lab experiment, fine-tune the parameters of the digital model itself, or even choose the best settings for the machine learning algorithms powering the twin. It's great when you can't afford to explore a million different possibilities.
Efficiency is key. So who was the brains behind this impressive lecture series?
It was a collaboration between Heiters for Health, BIVGS, and IHRS Biosoft. The fact that these different institutions teamed up really shows how interdisciplinary this whole field is.
It was an online series, right? Thursdays? It sounds like they really pushed for people to attend all the lectures to get the whole picture.
Oh, for sure. The series was designed to be comprehensive, so each lecture built upon the previous ones. They wanted people to get a nuanced understanding of the whole digital twin landscape, and there were limited spots, prioritizing fellows from the organizing institutions, so clearly a lot of interest in this stuff.
And for the dedicated attendees, there was a little something extra, right?
Yeah, if you attended at least 70% of the lectures, you could get a certificate of attendance. A little badge of honor for your commitment to learning about this cutting-edge field.
Not bad. So to wrap up, it's clear that digital twins are more than just fancy digital copies. They're powerful, dynamic tools that can revolutionize how we do things, and they're popping up everywhere.
Definitely. The lecture series really highlighted the diverse approaches out there, from like the fundamental science to the hardcore machine learning stuff. And the applications are truly mind-boggling. It's this amazing intersection of so many different fields.
And seeing how all these disciplines, AI, physics, medicine, even law, come together to push this technology forward, it's really fascinating. Hopefully, our listeners now have a solid grasp of the core concepts and just how much potential there is in this rapidly evolving field.
And this brings us to a thought-provoking question for you, our listener. Thinking about everything we've discussed, all those different approaches, from modeling individual patients to simulating entire biological systems, from physics-based methods to data-driven predictions, what application of digital twins excites you the most? What raises the most interesting questions for you? It's a field bursting with possibilities, and we're just scratching the surface.